directing the war against China or the Dutch East Indies, securing the emperor's favor, fighting the Imperial Japanese Navy.
Yeah. And none of these orders should be like, it doesn't make any sense in the chain of command of things. If you would have said, oh, this is coming from General Homa, it would have made more sense. But the thing is, if Tsuji said, hey, this is coming from General Homa, some of these guys might actually radio in and ask Homa themselves. So that's why he was trying to be clever with this ploy. That night, the marchers from Medevils endured severe conditions. They were crammed together in enclosures that made it difficult to move. Captain Mark Woodfeld, the guy we were talking about, had drifted off to sleep when a foul stench roused him. Upon opening his eyes, he found his face lying on filthy rags. He jumped up under the bright tropical moonlight, realized the rags were actually the trousers of a man behind him, soaked in excrement and blood. He said, "That rotten son of a bitch." Well, this is what he shouted. He shoved the trousers into the soldier's face, but the man did not even move. Woodfeld called out for him to get up. And he pulled his face only to discover that the man was dead. So the man had just literally died beside him. And as we know, your bowels open up when you die. So the Japanese guards were, angered by all this commotion. They began hitting Woodfeld, this poor guy, tossing him around. And then he was pointing out, the dead American soldier. He demanded permission to remove the corpse, but neither guard offered any assistance as he struggled to do so. He felt terrible for degrading the dead man, thinking it was all some kind of sick joke. He went on to write that he thought the Japanese had actually put that guy beside him on purpose. General Kaone had projected that it would take about a day for the prisoners to march to Balanga. However, many were on the road for over 3 days, because of course there's so many wounded. With every mile, the guards grew increasingly irritated and more brutal. The sun blazed relentlessly, providing little shade for the marchers. And by April the 11th, Balanga was bustling with shouting guards, herding waves upon waves of prisoners. It quickly became evident that the logistics were completely strained. An attempt was made to provide the prisoners their first meal, but the overwhelming numbers led frustration and, just disastrous distribution. Some received rice, salt, and water, while others got nothing at all. From Balanga, Kaone intended to transport all the prisoners in trucks to San Fernando, yet more than half would have to continue on foot. General Jones led his column through the night, covering over 8 miles to reach Onai. There they were crammed into a rice paddy enclosed by barbed wire. With the onset of darkness came another nightmare, swarms upon swarms of mosquitoes was descending upon them. For those needing to relieve themselves, they were taken to latrine pits, which consisted of open holes filled with feces, requiring one man to assist another, or they risked falling in and drowning. Pretty gross. In the morning, Mark Woodfeld noticed a few dead bodies were floating in some of these pits. Woodfeld attempted to persuade the Japanese guards to let him and others retrieve the bodies, only to be thrown to the ground and beaten for his efforts. So this Woodfeld guy he had a hard time during what is known as the Bataan Death March. The next day, prisoners were fed lugao, a paste-like rice mush. The trek to the next station, which was at Lubao, was another 60 miles. Another place where guards were inhumane. It was another place where some of the guards were more humane. They permitted water breaks, but others, were kicking the cans of water over, set by Filipino civilians, and they were forcing the prisoners to squat in the scorching sun as a rest break. So again, evil's being done, acts of goodness are being done. It's all over the place.
I think I remember we had this, conversation between the two of us on why the Japanese also were quite, aggressive as well. I think one of the reasons
I just released the episode. I have an episode on my Patreon literally titled "Why was the Japanese military? Why they perform so many atrocities?" And it's going to be released on the Pacific War Week by Week podcast for free next week. So that would be, the week of September the 20th.
I mean, yeah. I think it is just down to supplies and their own officers beating the crap out of them. So this is the easiest way to take it out.
Yeah, I had a history professor describe it as a large pecking order. It was a system of physical abuse, and every Japanese from general to grunt was beaten the shit out of. And when you went all the way down the pecking order and there was no one under you, the grunts would start beating up civilians.
POWs and civilians.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, as you mentioned in one example here, right, the officer who was trying not to have his the Notre Dame ring removed, that Japanese officer who graduated from Southern California, he literally beat up the Japanese soldier who was taking the ring away from the
Yep.
American. So
It
I think that's just
was
an example
yeah.
of an officer beating up the soldier.
It was systemic, the violence against their troops, like physically the beatings. There's also a culture of not respecting an adversary that surrendered. They saw it as, disgusting, so they had cultural things that kind of like enforce the idea that these people should not be treated well. In the episode, if people are interested, in a week or two, it'll come out on the Pacific War Week by Week podcast. I have basically 10 categories I go through as to why the Japanese did what they did. So you can listen to it there. It's tries to explain it in a very thorough manner because it's a very complex situation. It has to deal with a very a bastardized version of Bushido, a culture that promotes suicide and not surrender for that matter, and violence amongst the troops against each other. There's a lot of factors. So, yeah. Corpses line the
It's
ditches along the sides. Oh,
just
yeah.
funny that they try to take inspiration from, like, the Shogun era, Sengoku
Yeah, I
Jidai
know.
kind of. But a lot of those guys were willing to actually surrender for the safety of their men, as long as they just committed seppuku and such. So it was really like the top command that would get got it. Now it's just everyone gets got it.
Yeah, exactly. So corpses line the ditches along the sides of the roads, with crows tearing into them amidst clouds of flies. Lieutenant Colonel Alan Stowell began counting the corpses, reaching 27 before he chided to himself, "You've got to cut this out." And then he resumed marching with his gaze fixed straight ahead.